Now we are going to dive into the absolute cornerstone of operating system security and stability, the architecture of isolation. At the hardware level, this isolation is enforced by CPU privilege rings. Modern processors implement distinct rings to restrict what instructions can be executed at any given moment. User applications run up here in ring 3, which is completely unprivileged. An application cannot directly access physical memory, disk, or network interfaces. If it tries, the CPU triggers a general protection fault. To perform any hardware I/O, the application must cross the boundary via the system call gateway. This transition is mediated by hardware instructions like trap or size center, switching the CPU privilege state from ring 3 to ring 0. The key benefit of this design is fault containment. Because user space processes are strictly isolated from the kernel, a severe crash or segmentation fault in an app process is safely contained. The kernel remains unscathed, preventing a full system crash. However, this security boundary comes with a significant performance penalty. Every time we cross between ring 3 and ring 0, we incur context switch latency. The CPU must save its registers, switch the page tables, and flush the translation look-aside buffer, which degrades caching efficiency. Building on our previous analysis of kernel space, let's examine the inherent fragility of kernel extensions. When we write custom drivers or loadable modules, we are introducing third-party code directly into the most sensitive and highly privileged area of the operating system. First, let's look at the privilege risks. Linux kernel modules, or LKMs, execute directly within ring 0. This means they run with absolute CPU privileges. Unlike user space applications, there is no hardware, enforced boundary or page table isolation between the core kernel code and these modules. They share the exact same address space. To understand the gravity of this design, let's look at the anatomy of a kernel panic. In user space, if a process dereferences a null pointer, the MMU detects the violation and the OS safely terminates that specific process with a segmentation fault. But inside ring 0, there is no safety net. A null pointer dereference inside an LKM triggers a page fault that cannot be resolved, instantly halting the entire physical host to prevent further data corruption. Let's summarize these architectural differences using this comparison table. Notice how a user process operates in ring 3 with isolated memory, making its crash outcome completely localized. An LKM, however, has unrestricted access to all system memory. A single runtime execution fault here bypasses all hardware protection, leading to a catastrophic system-wide crash. The trade-off between bare metal performance and system safety is incredibly stark here. Today we are diving into one of the most revolutionary technologies in modern Linux system programming, the Extended Berkeley Packet Filter, commonly known as eBPF. At its core, eBPF allows us to run custom code directly inside the Linux kernel dynamically, without modifying the kernel source code or loading dangerous kernel modules. Historically, if you wanted to extend kernel behavior, you had to write a Linux kernel module, or LKM. But LKMs are highly risky. A single null pointer dereference or out-of-bounds memory access could trigger a catastrophic kernel panic, crashing the entire operating system. eBPF bypasses this risk entirely by implementing ring 0 sandboxing, running safely within a protected virtual machine inside the kernel space itself. Look at the verification process shown here. Before any eBPF bytecode is allowed to run, it must pass through the static verifier. This safety check ensures the program does not contain infinite loops that could hang the CPU, respects memory boundaries, and has the appropriate privileges. Once approved, the just-in-time compiler translates the bytecode into native machine instructions to achieve near native execution speed. Additionally, eBPF is highly efficient because of its event-driven nature. Instead of continuously polling or consuming CPU cycles, eBPF programs remain dormant until triggered by specific system hooks. These hooks can be network packets, probes, upprobes, trace points, or even security-critical syscalls, giving us deep observability and control with minimal overhead. Finally, to move data out of the kernel to our user space applications, we cannot rely on slow, expensive context switches. This is where zero-copy eBPF maps come into play. They act as a high-performance shared memory bridge, allowing asynchronous, bidirectional communication with negligible performance impact. Let's make sure we understand these foundational structures as we prepare to write our first eBPF program. Let's turn our attention to one of the most significant shifts in high-performance networking, the network bypass paradigm. Historically, the operating system kernel managed all network traffic. However, as link speed scaled from 1 gigabit to 100 gigabits and beyond, the CPU became the primary bottleneck. To understand why, we must look at the legacy TCP/IP bottlenecks. In a traditional path, every inbound packet triggers an interrupt, forcing a context switch. The kernel allocates a massive metadata structure known as an skybuf, or SKB, in ring 0, allocating and delocating SKB metadata, copying packet payloads across the user kernel boundary, and evaluating linear if tables rules sequentially creates massive CPU overhead that severely limits throughput. As shown in the traditional flow on the left of our diagram, a packet has to traverse the entire network driver, ascend through the kernel TCP/IP stack, and only then reach the user application. This deep stack traversal is far too slow for line rate processing on modern hardware. This is where eBPF and the Express Data Path, or XDP, come into play. XDP introduces a direct to NIC driver execution hook. Instead of waiting for the kernel to process the packet and allocate an SKB, we execute an eBPF program directly at the lowest level of the network driver. By placing the XDP hook directly inside the network driver, we intercept the raw packet frame instantly. The eBPF program executes in the driver's for loop, long before any memory allocation or protocol stack processing occurs. This architecture enables line rate actions. We can perform ultra-fast packet filtering, routing, or immediate dropping. For example, in a DDoS attack mitigation scenario, malicious packets are discarded directly at the network interface card, completely bypassing the kernel's memory subsystem and saving valuable CPU cycles. Now that we understand how eBPF programs are loaded, let's focus on the absolute core of the eBPF security architecture, the eBPF verifier. I like to call it the ultimate gatekeeper of the kernel. Unlike traditional Linux kernel modules, or LKMs, which run with full privileges and can easily trigger a catastrophic kernel panic if they contain a bug, eBPF enforces mathematical safety guarantees on untrusted bytecode before it ever executes in ring 0. Let's break down the static analysis and JIT pipeline. Before the just-in-time compiler translates the bytecode into native machine instructions, the verifier performs a rigorous static analysis. It simulates the execution of the program, exploring all possible execution paths. To prevent infinite loops that could hang the entire operating system, it evaluates the program as a directed acyclic graph, mathematically proving that every path will safely terminate. In addition to termination, we have strict memory bounds and register tracking. The verifier does a dry run of the code, evaluating how registers change step by step. If an instruction attempts to access memory outside of authorized boundaries, such as helper functions or stack limits, the verifier halts and rejects the program. As you can see from this safety invariant representation, the verifier tracks the state of each register, verifying that pointer arithmetic remains strictly within safe, predictable limits. This ensures zero out-of-bounds memory access. This table lists the specific verifier check rules that are applied. It covers loop restrictions, memory boundary validation, and register type tracking. If a developer tries to cast a map pointer to an arbitrary integer or dereference an uninitialized register, the verifier will catch it right here, saving the kernel from corruption. Now that we have covered how eBPF programs run securely inside the kernel, let's address a major paradigm shift happening in the system programming world, while Rust is rapidly replacing C as the standard language for writing eBPF probes. Let's start with the core issue, the architectural mismatch between C and the eBPF verifier. In standard kernel development, an issue in a traditional LKM can trigger a catastrophic kernel panic, crashing the entire system. eBPF prevents this by forcing all bytecode through a strict in-kernel verifier before execution in ring 0. However, because C is inherently unsafe, we are forced to write in a highly restricted C dialect. This dialect bans features we take for granted, like global variables or arbitrary pointer arithmetic, to ensure safe termination. Because the C compiler doesn't understand these restrictions, it compiles code that the verifier will reject later. This creates an extremely frustrating loop of trial and error. This is where Rust and modern frameworks like Aya come in. Aya is a pure Rust eBPF toolchain and loader. By leveraging Rust's compile time safety, specifically ownership and lifetimes, we can model the verifier safety invariants directly in our source code. The Rust compiler effectively acts as our local verifier. We call this shift-left verification. Rather than waiting for a context switch during deployment to find out our probe failed validation, we catch safety bugs at compile time. This allows us to write correct, by construction kernel probes that load successfully on the first run. Now, let's open this up for a broader architectural discussion.